The Senate chamber was buzzing that afternoon, cameras rolling from every angle, because everyone knew this wasn't going to be a routine hearing. On one side sat Senator John Neely Kennedy of Louisiana, his signature drawl masking the sharpest legal mind in the room. On the other side, invited as a guest voice on social issues, was Hollywood titan Denzel Washington, a man adored by millions for his films, speeches, and carefully cultivated public persona. The air was thick with anticipation. Reporters scribbled in their notebooks, waiting for a headline. Viewers across the nation tuned in, expecting a clash between politics and celebrity. Denzel leaned into the microphone, his tone polished, his words dripping with the confidence of a man used to applause. "We need leaders who stop dividing, who stop selling fear, and who finally start listening to the people," he declared, his Hollywood cadence filling the room. Applause trickled from the gallery, mostly from admirers dazzled by his fame. He smirked, confident he was the star of the moment. But Kennedy wasn't there to play backup in a Hollywood script. He adjusted his glasses, leaned forward, and with that unshakable calm he was known for, fired the first shot. "Mr. Washington," he said, his drawl cutting through the chamber, "you make a fine actor. But out here, in the real world, the script is written in facts, not fiction. Your fame can't save you from the truth." The room froze. Denzel blinked, taken off guard. The words hung heavy, sharper than any line from a film. Reporters' pens flew across pages, capturing the moment. The crowd shifted uneasily, torn between admiration for the star and respect for the senator's grit. For the first time that day, it wasn't Denzel commanding the spotlight, it was Kennedy. Denzel tried to recover quickly, flashing that familiar Hollywood smile, the kind that had charmed audiences for decades. "Senator," he said smoothly, "I may be an actor, but I'm also a citizen who has every right to speak on issues that matter. Sometimes it takes a voice outside of politics to wake the system up." He leaned back in his chair as if he had just delivered a knockout punch, waiting for the audience to nod in agreement. But Kennedy didn't flinch. His eyes narrowed slightly, his tone still calm but layered with steel. "You're right about one thing, Mr. Washington," he replied. "Every citizen has a right to speak. But you don't just speak, you preach. You sit on red carpets in a tuxedo and lecture hardworking Americans who are struggling to pay for groceries and gas. Folks back home in Louisiana don't need Hollywood sermons. They need real solutions." The audience shifted again, the initial sparkle of Denzel's star power beginning to dim under the senator's blunt reality check. Kennedy's words weren't wrapped in applause lines or dramatic pauses. They were raw, unfiltered, and undeniably true to the people watching at home who felt disconnected from the glamorous world Denzel represented. Denzel bristled, his smile faltering. "With respect, Senator, I use my platform to inspire, to shine a light on injustice," he began, his voice rising. Kennedy cut him off, his drawl slicing through the chamber like a blade. "Injustice is when a single mom in Baton Rouge works 2 jobs and still can't afford medicine for her child. Injustice is when politicians waste taxpayer money while families tighten their belts. You want to talk about injustice? Let's talk about that. Not the rehearsed lines you bring from Hollywood." The room erupted, half with gasps, half with quiet applause. For the first time, the stage wasn't Denzel's. Kennedy had seized it, and he wasn't letting go. Denzel straightened in his chair, his Hollywood polish slipping into something sharper. "Senator, with all due respect, you're twisting my words. I've spent years giving back to communities, donating, mentoring, trying to be part of the solution. What have you done besides make speeches?" His tone carried both irritation and confidence, as if his fame and record of philanthropy would shield him. The camera zoomed in, eager to capture a dramatic clash. Kennedy didn't blink. He leaned in, his voice lowering, but his words striking harder than any shout. "Mr. Washington, writing checks with your Hollywood money is nice. Nobody denies that. But charity isn't leadership. Real leadership is rolling up your sleeves, getting your hands dirty, and making hard decisions for people you'll never meet. That's the job I signed up for. And unlike the movies, there ain't no script, no director, and no second take. The silence was deafening. Denzel opened his mouth but hesitated, realizing Kennedy had shifted the frame entirely. It wasn't about generosity anymore. It was about responsibility, and Kennedy had painted himself as the man grounded in reality while casting Denzel as the out-of-touch celebrity. Reporters scribbled furiously, already imagining the headlines, "Kennedy School's Hollywood Legend." The crowd in the chamber murmured, the balance of energy tilting away from the movie star and toward the senator with every sentence. Denzel finally managed a retort, his voice edged with frustration. "So you're saying my contributions don't count? That because I'm not a politician, should sit down and be quiet?" Kennedy tilted his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I'm saying, Mr. Washington, that you can play a leader on screen all you want. But out here, when the cameras stop rolling and the lights go down, it's the people, not Hollywood, who decide what leadership looks like. And I'm here to remind you, fame doesn't equal truth." The chamber erupted again, this time louder. Kennedy's words had landed like a hammer, and Denzel's carefully polished armor was beginning to crack. Denzel's jaw tightened, his Hollywood charm now replaced with the look of a man cornered. He tried to pivot, raising his voice to the audience. "See, this is what politicians do. They attack instead of listen. They belittle instead of collaborate. I've seen too many leaders like Senator Kennedy here who pretend to care while protecting the same broken system." His words hung in the air like a dramatic monologue, perfectly delivered, but it felt rehearsed, too polished, like another line from a script. Kennedy leaned back in his chair, pausing just long enough for the silence to sting. Then he leaned forward again, his southern drawl deliberate, sharp, and cutting. "Mr. Washington, I didn't come here to perform. You've spent your life perfecting the art of pretending. Pretending to be a hero, pretending to be a fighter, pretending to save the day. But when the lights go out and the credits roll, it's over. Meanwhile, back in Louisiana, folks are still trying to keep their lights on. That's the difference between your world and mine." The crowd gasped, some even applauding. The contrast was brutal and undeniable, Denzel's glamour versus Kennedy's grit. The Hollywood star, so used to controlling the narrative, now seemed exposed under the senator's relentless truth. Denzel tried again, forcing a smile. "Senator, I may act for a living, but I don't pretend to care about this country. I love America, and I use my voice to speak truth to power." Kennedy smirked, his voice calm but laced with fire. "Then here's some truth for you. America doesn't need more speeches from celebrities who fly in on private jets, lecture folks about sacrifice, and then fly back to mansions with gated walls. If you want to talk about sacrifice, come spend a week in Baton Rouge with the single moms, the farmers, the welders, the veterans. You'll find more wisdom in one diner booth than you will in a Hollywood gala." The chamber erupted again, applause drowning out Denzel's attempted rebuttal. The balance of power was shifting fast, and Kennedy knew it. Denzel's smile faded. He adjusted his suit jacket, trying to recover some composure, but the sweat forming at his temple betrayed the pressure. "Senator, with all due respect, people listen to me because I inspire them. Movies, art, storytelling, those things matter. They move people in ways politics never can." His tone was passionate, his words flowing like a script he had rehearsed 100 times, hoping to pull the audience back on his side. Kennedy let out a low chuckle, the kind that stung more than a direct insult. "Inspiration's fine, Mr. Washington. Nobody's knocking art. But let me tell you something, folks can't pay rent with inspiration. They can't put food on the table with speeches about hope and dreams. They need policies, jobs, security. They need leaders who don't disappear when the applause stops." The room went quiet again. Even some of the reporters glanced at each other, sensing Kennedy had delivered another gut punch. Denzel tried to hold the ground. You make it sound like what I do doesn't matter. Like culture, hope, and creativity are worthless. Kennedy leaned in, his eyes sharp. Culture matters. Hope matters. But here's the difference: when a farmer in Louisiana loses his crop, hope won't save him. When a soldier comes back broken from war, a speech about dreams won't heal him. And when a single mom is working 2 jobs just to keep her kids fed, she doesn't need Hollywood telling her to believe in herself. She needs leaders who'll fight to lower her bills and protect her family. That's what reality looks like. The audience stirred again, clapping, murmuring, even nodding in agreement. Denzel's Hollywood charisma was losing ground against Kennedy's relentless hammer of reality. The movie star, who built a career on commanding the stage, now looked like a man losing control of his own scene. Denzel's tone sharpened, his voice rising in frustration. "Senator, you keep attacking Hollywood like we're the enemy. But let me ask you this, aren't politicians the ones who've let people down? You stand there preaching about farmers and veterans, but Washington is full of corruption, gridlock, and empty promises. At least I'm honest about what I do. I make films. I entertain. I don't pretend to fix the country." Kennedy didn't flinch. He leaned back, folded his hands, and let the silence stretch just long enough to unsettle the actor. Then, with that slow Louisiana drawl, he fired back. "Mr. Washington, you just admitted it yourself. You entertain. That's fine. People like to be entertained. But don't confuse applause with answers. Don't confuse movie sets with reality. And don't come lecturing working folks about sacrifice while living in a mansion behind iron gates. That's not honesty. That's hypocrisy dressed up in designer suits." The audience gasped, and a ripple of applause broke out. Denzel's jaw tightened, but he tried to recover with a smirk. "So you're saying celebrities should just stay quiet? That we don't have a right to speak up?" Kennedy's eyes locked on him, steady and unyielding. "You have the same right as anyone else, sir. But rights come with responsibility. If a mechanic gives bad advice, someone's car breaks down. If a doctor gives bad advice, someone gets hurt. When celebrities give bad advice, millions follow it. And when it's wrong, it costs lives, jobs, futures. That's the difference. Your words aren't harmless, they carry weight. And if you're gonna play in the political arena, you better be ready for someone like me to call you out." The chamber shook with applause, louder this time. Denzel's Hollywood armor was cracking under the weight of Kennedy's relentless logic. For once, the spotlight wasn't saving him, it was burning him. Denzel leaned forward now, his voice lower but tinged with irritation. "You talk about responsibility, Senator, but Hollywood doesn't make laws. We don't send troops to war. We don't decide who gets healthcare or who doesn't. That's on you and every other politician sitting in Washington. So don't pin the failures of this country on people who just make movies." Kennedy's expression hardened, the humor gone from his eyes. He straightened in his chair, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Let me stop you right there, Mr. Washington. Nobody said Hollywood passes laws. But don't tell me you don't influence people. You know exactly what kind of power you've got. You go on late-night shows, you give speeches at award ceremonies, and you tell folks how they should vote, who they should trust, what they should believe. That's not harmless entertainment. That's propaganda wrapped in glamour." The audience reacted instantly, some gasping, others breaking into applause. Kennedy pressed on, his words relentless. "And here's the truth, when Washington fails, it's because too many folks care more about cameras than consequences. That's what you and half of Hollywood represent, a stage show. But real Americans? They don't live in stage shows. They live in neighborhoods where rent's due every month, where groceries cost more than a paycheck, where crime walks right past their front doors. And those people are sick of being told by celebrities that the solution is to just hope harder. Denzel shifted, visibly uncomfortable. He opened his mouth to respond but closed it again, his usual confidence faltering. Kennedy, sensing the weakness, delivered the final jab of the exchange. If you want to inspire people, do it honestly. Don't hide behind fame. Don't sell them dreams you'll never have to live by yourself. Because out here, dreams don't pay the bills, work does. And that's something Hollywood seems to forget. The applause thundered, echoing off the walls, drowning out whatever comeback Denzel might have had. For the first time, it was clear, Kennedy owned the stage. The camera zoomed in on Denzel, his lips pressed tight as if he were holding back the kind of sharp retort that had worked for him countless times on stage and screen. But here, under the relentless light of politics, his charm was losing its grip. He tried to chuckle, shaking his head. "Senator, you're painting Hollywood like some kind of villain. We don't run people's lives. We give them stories, we give them hope. Isn't that worth something?" Kennedy didn't smile. He leaned in, his voice calm but carrying the weight of conviction. "Hope's a fine thing, Mr. Washington. But hope without truth is just a lie dressed in pretty words. And that's what too many folks in your industry are selling, a fantasy that if you clap loud enough, chant hard enough, all the real problems will just vanish. But out where I'm from, in Louisiana, folks can't afford fantasies. They've got to choose between medicine and groceries. They've got to worry if their kids are safe walking home. And they don't need Hollywood telling them they're the problem because they vote differently than you do." A murmur rippled through the audience, many nodding in agreement. Kennedy continued, his southern drawl sharpening like steel. "You asked if giving stories is worth something? It is. But here's the catch: when you use those stories to preach, to divide, to shame half the country as backward or hateful, that's not giving hope. That's feeding poison." The applause was immediate, strong, cutting off Denzel's attempt to respond. He raised a hand, as if to speak, but the audience drowned him out. For the first time in his career, he was not the star of the show, he was the one being judged. Kennedy leaned back, his face firm, his tone final. "You say I paint Hollywood as a villain. I don't have to, sir. Hollywood does that job all by itself." The room erupted. Denzel's eyes darted, searching for footing, but Kennedy had stripped the floor right out from under him. Denzel finally raised his hand, urging the audience to quiet down. His voice was steady, but his tone betrayed irritation. "Senator, you keep talking like Hollywood is the root of all evil. But let's not forget, you're in Washington. That's where decisions get made, where power is abused. Don't lecture me about influence when your colleagues in Congress trade stocks while writing laws. Don't act like Hollywood invented corruption." The audience stirred, some nodding, others booing. For a moment, it seemed like Denzel might claw back some ground. But Kennedy was already leaning forward, eyes locked, ready to strike. "You're right about one thing," Kennedy said, his voice calm but thunderous. "There's corruption in Washington. I've been calling it out for years. But let me tell you the difference. When Washington fails, voters can throw us out. When Hollywood fails, you still get applause. You still get magazine covers, movie deals, and red carpets. That's the privilege you don't want to admit. And while you sit in mansions preaching to folks about how they should live, they're the ones paying the price for policies you cheer on but never have to live under." The crowd roared, clapping and shouting in agreement. Denzel's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing as Kennedy pressed harder. "You want to talk about corruption? Fine. But at least politicians face accountability at the ballot box. Hollywood hides behind box offices and fan clubs. That's not courage, that's cowardice." Denzel shifted uncomfortably, trying to summon his usual commanding presence, but the weight of Kennedy's words had tilted the room. The senator's voice had become the pulse of the debate, his every line hitting like a hammer. Kennedy leaned back in his chair, his eyes steady. "So yes, sir, Washington has its sins. But at least we face them in the open. Hollywood buries theirs under applause. The applause was deafening, leaving Denzel visibly rattled, his confidence cracked under the senator's relentless assault. The moderator, sensing the storm that had engulfed the room, tried to steer the discussion toward closing remarks. But Kennedy wasn't finished. He leaned forward, his voice steady yet charged with conviction. "Let me make this plain, Mr. Washington. I don't care how many Oscars are on your shelf, or how many millions cheer your name. Out in the real world, fame doesn't fix broken families, it doesn't put food on the table, and it sure as hell doesn't excuse hypocrisy." Denzel, his shoulders stiff, attempted one last defense. "Senator, people look to us because we inspire. We show them what's possible. That's not hypocrisy, it's hope." Kennedy shook his head slowly, the crowd hanging on his words. "Hope is built on truth, not on scripts. You inspire folks when you walk the walk, not when you stand on a stage and preach at them for being poor, religious, or conservative. That's not hope, Mr. Washington, that's condescension." A thunderous applause broke out, louder than anything before, rattling the stage. Denzel tried to smile, tried to project confidence, but the cracks were clear. His trademark poise had dissolved, replaced with the look of a man realizing he was no longer in control of the narrative. Kennedy's drawl cut through the noise like a blade. "So go ahead and keep your applause, your premieres, your red carpets. I'll keep fighting for the folks who don't have any of that, who only have their faith, their families, and the dignity of hard work. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who matter. And no Hollywood spotlight can outshine that truth." The audience erupted to their feet, a standing ovation rolling through the hall. Denzel sat frozen, his attempt to laugh it off gone, replaced with silence. For the first time in his storied career, he was not the star. Kennedy was. And the senator had delivered a performance no Hollywood script could ever match. Ladies and gentlemen, what we saw tonight was more than just a clash of words. It was a clash of worlds, Hollywood glamour versus the grit of real America. Denzel Washington thought his fame could shield him, that applause could silence truth. But Senator John Kennedy reminded us all that no spotlight, no red carpet, and no script can outshine honesty, accountability, and th.